Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Bleav in Hawks episode. We have more continuing playoff coverage today on the show. We're going to talk about the semifinal series for the Eastern and Western conferences. Some have already kicked off. Some are kicking off tonight as I am recording this. So I'll give my thought on the series that have been played so far and started, and the series coming up. Also, going to start my player season and reviews. Today, we're going to talk about Kobe Bufkin and Muhammad Gueye and their seasons for Atlanta and talking about the projection for next season as well. So we'll have all that today on the podcast. And then later this week, we will talk about, well, actually, next episode, I am bringing someone on from the Orlando Magic, a good friend of mine, covers the team down there, just because, again, I'm kind of doing this thing where when I bring people on outside of Atlanta people, where teams that would be a good trade partner for Atlanta or potentially connected to Atlanta, I want to, talk to people from those teams. Obviously, it will be more Orlando Magic-centric episode, just like their season, how it went, things like that. But obviously, there will be some Atlanta Hawks connection to it as well. So definitely excited to get that out to you guys as this offseason continues on for the Hawks and we get closer to the draft lottery that is coming up very, very soon. I think it's coming up in like a week, like a week maybe. So obviously we'll talk about that as people hope Hawks can maybe get a potential high draft pick. But anyway, let's get into it. The playoffs, we're going to go ahead and start with the biggest series that people are talking about right now. Denver in Minnesota. Minnesota up 2-0 in that series. Anthony Edwards has been fantastic. And Minnesota has been fantastic in that series, especially after Game 2 dominating the Denver Nuggets. I mean, in a way that we haven't seen the Nuggets dominated, all season, even dating back to last season. Like, Denver usually is the team that dominates, not them being dominated. And they lost last night, 106-80. In 2 games at home, that's obviously not good for Denver to lose those 2. And now you're going on the road to Minnesota, which has some people wondering, could a sweep potentially be in the horizon? Minnesota sweep Phoenix last series, so that would be huge and a big shocker to the league if Minnesota was able to finish off Denver in the next 2 games, the defending world champions. And I'll get into why the series has turned out the way it is. Talking about Minnesota. Minnesota is such an impressive team. Like, when I watch Minnesota, they don't have any bad defensive lineups. Like literally, they are the best defensive team in the league construction-wise. Even losing Rudy Gobert, a defensive player of the year candidate, and a former defensive player of the year, they defensively are ridiculous. Like, there is no weak defender. Like, every team has like a weak defender you can go after. Like, yeah, he's the weak spot. Like, we could take advantage of him. Denver's weakest defensive player may be either Kyle Anderson, who actually is a good defender, or Mike Conley, who, if you know Mike Conley's career, has been known as a defensive first point guard to begin with. And so they have no weakness defensively, and Denver is having a hard time scoring against them. And you've seen it in this series. It's the Suns last series had issues at times scoring against Minnesota. They are long. They can defend 1 through 5. They can switch. They have shot blocking. They have great point of attack defenders. They have a great matchup for every offensive player you have. Like, think about it. You got Joker. They got 2 centers they can throw him, and Naz Reid. You think about Jamal Murray. They can throw Mike Conley at him. They can go Ant at him. They can throw Jaden McDaniels at him. They have multiple defenders for every position. So there's no position where it's like we can take advantage of that position, because they have multiple strong defenders they can throw at you. And that's really what's going to carry them, realistically. Adding, I think it was Nickeil Walker. Yeah, Nickeil Alexander Walker. Adding him was actually huge because he fit the DNA of what they want it to be. If you remember last year for the Timberwolves, Cat wasn't at 100%. I believe they didn't have Naz Reid, and I believe they didn't have Jaden McDaniels. I remember Jaden McDaniels got hurt right before the playoffs. And, I think Bruce Brown said it on a podcast. He said, Minnesota, they gave us our toughest test last season, And so And that's with the injuries. And now, fast forward to this year, Minnesota right now is dominating them. And like I said, they're just so great defensively. Like, I think they're going to cause everybody issues. Like, Minnesota right now looks truly like they're the favorites in the Western Conference to get to the finals out of everyone, just because of that. And then offensively, they're getting enough production. Cat really was the key in this series because sometimes he could fall in love with that three-point shot too much, and that can sometimes frustrate people. But realistically, Cat has really came a long way in just playing smarter. And I think in the playoffs, especially, him playing smarter. Knowing you can hit the three, but also, don't be afraid to put your back to the basket and score in the paint, use your size to your advantage. And I think he's done that in this series. And the thing about it is, too, I think this role being a number two it fits Karl-Anthony Towns perfectly. For the longest time, Cat had to be the number one guy. And I just don't think that's his personality. I don't think he's a number one guy from a personality perspective. But he is a really, really skilled and good player. And I think with Ant coming in and really taking that next step, he's taken a step every year he's been in the league. It's really helped him kind of get into his role and know what he needs to do. Because Cat is a very strong number two in this game. So he's played well. Ant, we know, has been incredible. It's actually funny. Trae Young, under a tweet for Everything Georgia, if you know about that Twitter account, tweeted about Ant should have been a Hawk. And I've seen Hawks fans tweet that out, that Ant should have been a Hawk. I Bleav that season, the Minnesota had the number one pick, and there were rumors about them trading it. I don't remember everything. I haven't researched it, but I'm assuming the Hawks maybe were in discussions with that for that pick potentially. And listen, we don't know what happens behind the scenes. I've seen people say behind the scenes, Trae told him to go up to one and they didn't, and whatever. Because that narrative is out there that Ant should have been a Hawk, and people are like, what do you mean? You had the sixth pick. Well, how are you going to get Ant? And so could be a foreshadowing of maybe some behind the scenes stuff that was going on at that time. But, because Ant's, publicly talked about wanting to play for the Hawks. Just, in general, if he ever had the opportunity to. Now that Minnesota's good, clearly that's not going to come anytime soon. He has no reason to leave Minnesota right now if you're winning. If Minnesota falls off or something, maybe in that situation, we could look into potentially Ant, could join the Hawks years later. But as of right now, he is, as he should be, very content in Minnesota, especially with them sitting the way they look. And it seems like they're going to be the Western Conference representatives as of right now. Obviously, there's still a lot of ball left to be played, so nothing guaranteed. But as of right now, they look fantastic in this series, and they've just looked like the way better team than Denver. And then talking about Denver, I think Denver, even through that Lakers series, some people have said Denver can be got. And I think you have a couple of things working against you. Jamal Murray has been playing through that calf really all season long. And the difference is now is that in the regular season, you can take games off, get yourself back ready, play a few games, take some games off, and kind of do that. Playoffs, they kind of need Jamal Murray to play. And the problem is that now Jamal can't rest, or else, that could lead to them being eliminated. And so he's playing through it, but you can see he's not the same player. And it's weird because he did what he did against LA. And it's like, well, yeah, you can have games where you have huge games. Like, that's not something that can't happen. But to think every single game he's going to be like that is really unrealistic. And he's such an important part of this team. If you remember Denver before Jamal Murray was healthy last year, they were making it to the playoffs. Joker was winning MVPs, but they were losing in the first, second round because realistically, they didn't have that other guy. And Jamal's always been that other guy. And so we have evidence even before this season. When Jamal's not healthy, Denver's not really going far. And right now, Jamal, even though he's playing, he's not healthy. And when you have the type of defenders, the relentless defenders that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, that's just not that's not going to bode well for Denver. That's not going to bode well for them at all in this series. And so they are really struggling offensively, and they're struggling defensively. Like, I'm seeing Timberwolves getting cuts and back cuts and dunks, and it feels like Minnesota's able to get a lot of the shots they want, where Denver, it feels like they're not. they're really working hard to get shots. And Reggie Jackson went down last night. We'll see what his injury update is. Jamal's not healthy. Michael Porter Jr. seems to not have his shot like he did against the Lakers. Joker hasn't been that just best player on the floor like you expect from him. All those things are working against Denver right now. And if they can't flip that switch and turn it around going into Minnesota for game 3, this series may be all but over. And Minnesota is going to be in the Western Conference Finals. So Denver has to figure something out because right now they're struggling. They're struggling. And so they're going to have to figure out how they can best come back from this. They're the defending champs, so you never want to rule them out. You never want to say it's over. You never want to say that, oh, they're done. But it's definitely something that's going to take some time. It's definitely something that I think they're going to need to figure out, okay, how's the best way we can rebound from this and get a game in Minnesota, to get it back to Denver, try to maybe get it to 6 games, unless you can get both in Minnesota and make this a new series again. So right now, Minnesota looks fantastic. I mean, they look like a great team. And then we'll go to the Eastern Conference now. We have the Knicks and Pacers. It was actually kind of funny. I said this to myself watching the game. I said it's kind of crazy that either the Pacers or the Knicks are going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. You know, like, because I don't think anybody expected either of those teams to make it there, including myself. But that's how the NBA and the Eastern Conference is shaken out. And last night, it was a fantastic game. It was close, competitive. Both teams put it all on the line. For the Knicks, you pretty much know what they're going to do. Play really good defense. You know, you need Brunson to continue to be great. You get contributing role players like OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, Hartenstein, key rebounds, key plays, key shots, and just kind of keep the game within reach and Bleav you're always going to be able to grind it out and be able to beat you at the end. And that's really been their formula. And that's been the formula. And this series is such an interesting style of basketball, because Pacers want to do a lot of ball movement, play really fast. That's why they were one of the best offensive teams in the game this past season. Where the Knicks want to play more of a half court, slow it down, grind it out. We just want to try to get the best quality shots on every possession we can get, and we're not afraid to use the shot clock. And so early in the game, when the Pacers led, they were able to play with a faster pace, and the Knicks were not able to control the pace, and that allowed the Pacers to get that lead. When the second half happened, the Knicks were, especially in that fourth quarter, the Knicks were able to start controlling the pace, and so that allowed them to creep back into the game and then eventually, obviously, win it with key plays at the end. Obviously, for the Pacers, the biggest thing is that you're not getting what you need from your star, Tyrese Haliburton. He has not been the same player. People like to bring up the hamstring injury. I think even before the injury, he was starting to go downhill. He's not taking a lot of shots. He's not scoring a lot of points. And realistically, Indiana's in this position because guys like Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, guys like that have played really, really good. Obviously, Siakam, those guys have stepped up, and that's why they're here. But you need Tyrese Haliburton if you're going to beat the Knicks. He has to be good. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. If he's not good, they're losing this series. And so they need him to be better than what he was in game 1 if they're going to have a chance of beating the Knicks. Because you cannot have that discrepancy in guard play and think you're going to beat this team the way the Knicks play. So he has to figure it out, all right? Or else Pacers had a great run. Now, luckily, Pacers have been a surprising team. They went to the in-season tournament finals when people kind of didn't expect it. They've been better than I think a lot of people have expected them to be this season. And I think just before the season, what they projected. And that's been great for them because that's setting up a culture and that's setting up what Rick Carlisle wants to do there in Indiana. But realistically, you kind of you're at a point now where, they may feel like this was a successful season regardless of how the season ends, just because of the fact they're in the position they're in right now. So that's obviously really good for them to be in a spot where they feel like, all right, we got some good stuff going, and we feel very strongly about what we're trying to do and how things are looking towards the future. But realistically, in this series, the key is just a matter of if the Knicks are able to play their style and Tyrese Halliburton isn't stepping up to the challenge and stepping up to the bright lights of the playoffs, they're going to lose the series. If the Pacers can play their pace and Halliburton can go back to what he was that made everybody fall in love with him and start even using he's better than Trae Young, which he's not, then Pacers will have a great chance of winning the series. Like the Knicks are to me not going to blow this team out of the building. I just think at the end of the day, they're a grinded out tough team that tries to get the best quality shot, and that's not an easy team to beat. So you got to be on your P's and Q's. But if you're not, they'll beat you. The Knicks are not going to let you beat them. I mean, the Knicks are not going to beat themselves. You have to beat the Knicks. Pacers had an opportunity last night to steal game one. They had an opportunity most of that game and just could not finish the deal. So we'll have to see how they come back in game two and see how both teams adjust to what happened in the original game. But so obviously, like I said, I'm going to talk about the playoff series. So we're going to actually transition to Hawks here, talk about the players in season player reviews, then transition to the two series that are happening starting tonight. So two players I want to start with today, like I said, Kobe Bufkin, Muhammad Gueye. And we're going to start with Kobe Bufkin. Hawks first round pick from this past season. A guy who was able to play some real minutes for the team later in the season. Showed some flashes, but also in the G League played really well. Did some good things. He played 14 games in the G League. His stat line, 23 points, really 24. 5 rebounds, 6 assists. He shot 44% from the field and 35% from three. When he came to the NBA main roster, obviously he wasn't getting the same minutes and things of that nature. So he was 5-2-1 in 17 games on 37% shooting. Some of the strengths I got for him for this past season, great point of attack defender, which is what the Hawks desperately need. He seems to play under control. Kobe never seems to play sped up to me, which is really good for a guy. Because, sometimes your concern is, when guys come into the league from the draft, from college, it's like, are they adapting to the pace of play? Are they sped up? Are they playing faster than the pace of play because they're trying to, make an impact? He seems to be able to play under control. And he seems to also be someone who, pretty much plays within the system. Whatever Quinn needed him to do, he would play within it. Didn't ever seem like he was trying to go outside of what he needed to do. And things of that nature. Now, things he can improve, shot making and finishing. I think that obviously his thing out of college was his defense. He was known for his defense. His offensive game, especially this last year at Michigan, kind of improved, which helped him become a better overall player, which helped him become a lottery pick player. But there's still work to be done there. He's still working on finishing at the rim. He's been working on his mid-range shots, still looking to improve the three-point shot. That if he can get that up to a good percentage, that can be really good for him and just make him more reliable and more playable outside of defense. Just being able to say, hey, he can come in and run the show and then also at the same time provide on both ends of the ball. Also, I put in there playing better against being pressured. I can't remember the exact game, but there was a game he played in that I think the team was kind of pressing him a little bit, and he kind of seemed to struggle with that a little bit. Obviously, again, that's something he has to get used to. I think Quinn, had his minutes. He was playing a certain rotational minutes leading up to that game. It kind of changed when that happened. And I wonder if that was because Quinn kind of saw he was struggling with the pressure a little bit. So obviously I just put that down as something else he can improve. His outlook for the next season. The biggest thing for him this offseason to work on, like I said, is working on his offensive game, improving that. Obviously, if the Hawks move Trae or DeJounte, you would assume he would be the backup point guard. So he would be a part of the rotation on a normal basis. Just working on his shot, continuing to develop his body. I know when he came in, he was a little light. You could see he put some weight on. Maybe trying to obviously get his right body type for the league he needs to play at, and just continuing to be a strong defender. Like I said, one of the big issues is when Trae Young comes off the floor, especially, or DeJounte. Your Hawks seem to, yeah, I mean, they really never did it at all this year unless they were both out, but would be like, oh, can they operate an offense without them, right? Well, they can. It's just, you haven't really had the best prototypical point guards to run it. Kobe Bufkin shows me the ability to run an offense, but also provide impact on both ends. And that's something he's continue to grow in, continuing to improve in, continuing to develop. And I think that's something that I'm excited for. I'm excited for him. I've had my good Hawks friend, Glenn, he's been on the show before. He said that he thinks Kobe can be a defensive setter, culture setter, because of that. Because when you watch Kobe Bufkin, you've seen the defensive prowess that he has. You've seen what he can do defensively. He can stay in front of guys, and he can play well. And listen, it's the NBA. He's still learning. There's different players that are gonna hit him with the welcome to the league, moments, and they're gonna whoop him. And that's just part of it. That's just part of it, because that's a guy that you'll play against multiple times. So maybe he can learn every time on film how I can guard a guy better. But a biggest thing for him, especially if he wants to sustain longer minutes, is offensively, because you do want to continue to be able to score, or at least be a scoring threat. Like I said, he has a mid-range that he's working on. He has a 3-point shot that he's working on. He really just showcased it and looked good in G League. NBA was kind of hit and miss, but you saw flashes of it. And like just finishing at the rim, being a threat towards the rim, being able to create some shots, getting close to the basket. So Kobe Bufkin, realistically, really in a good place, really in a good spot right now. Just continuing, like I said, to get better and continuing to just try to improve. So realistically, really excited for him. And I'm excited for him to take that next step and really become a household name with the Hawks. And a guy who can probably kind of play some combo guard too. So you might see him play some 1 and 2 with the Hawks like he did this past season. But I expect him to have a bigger role. And I think if he could improve his offensive game, he could really be he could definitely set the tone from a point of attack perspective, defensively, especially for the Hawks. And then Mohamed Gueye. Well, okay, first, before I go to Mohamed Gueye, one last point about Kobe. Also, staying healthy. He was hurt at times this year. That was a big issue for the entire team, but I'll mention that too. And now let's talk to the other guy, like I said, Mohamed Gueye, who also had injuries. Most of his NBA season was lost to injury. Mohamed Gueye was a guy that people were excited about coming out of the draft when they drafted in the second round for the Hawks. Really raw basketball player. Hasn't played a lot of basketball in general in his career, but you could see the athleticism. You could see the talent that he possesses. A guy who's extremely athletic. Yeah, he could shoot the ball. He could be a stretch big. A guy who I think can be a high-level defender, once he grows into his NBA body, which is one of the biggest things. When he came into the league, he was skinny. He definitely put on some weight as the season went on. He may still need to put on a little bit more weight as the season continues, or I mean, going into the offseason and going into next season. But realistically, like I said, his strengths, like I said, for him, athleticism, shot blocking, seems like he could be a high-level defender. He literally has a long wingspan. He's like 6'10", 6'11". He's versatile. He can play 3 through 5. I think the Hawks look at him as more as a forward, but can play 3 through 5. Like, he is very versatile. I just think about the pairing of Jalen Johnson and then taking Jalen off the floor, and then you're breaking Mohamed Gueye. It's just like, it's not a break. Like, if Mohamed Gueye can reach maybe the potential that he has, I mean, that is a crazy duo at the 4 spot for the Hawks, or 3, whatever they feel like is best for him. Needs improvement, obviously. Shot. Well, hold up, that's Kobe. Okay, needs improvement. Shooting, obviously, he shot the ball decently this year. Just something still improve. Obviously, it's not. Again, this isn't his final form at all. Playing under control, there were times you could see he seemed like low, like he seemed a little overwhelmed at times. He seemed nervous. That's just part of experience. Like I said, he lost a lot of the NBA season to injury. So just getting used to pace of play, the game, not being overwhelmed, not being playing erratically. That's just something that's just going to come with experience. Developing his NBA body, something he's been working on, something he'll continue to work on as he goes into the offseason. And then, like I said, just staying healthy. He missed a lot of the season due to injury. So staying healthy is really important for him to continue that, continue to stay healthy, and then just gaining experience, just getting more basketball reps. And that honestly is going to be the biggest thing for Mouhamed Gueye. If he can get more experience playing basketball, he shows the potential to be he can be a really good player. And I've said that I think out of this entire draft class that they had this past season, that he has the highest potential to me out of all of them. Because like I said, that second round, you usually take guys who are going to be forever role players or overseas, or guys who may have potential to be starters one day, but just are extremely raw right at that moment. And so they're not at all ready to maybe play real NBA ball. And like I said, and there's a lot of things that he's working on and he's improving. Like I said, that Pacers game was at the end of the season was a good insight. I think he had 19 points that game. So he played really well. And and he's a guy that I really have high expectations for. And I think if you're the Hawks, I would assume that in these offseason meetings, when they talked about things they want you to work on, I'm assuming they're like, hey, Kobe, there is a very good chance that you will have an increased role next year, a bigger role with the team, and it may be in the rotation. So we need you to improve these things so we can effectively play you and have a confidence in playing you and things of that nature. So the Hawks easily could go very young next year with what they have going on. But to me, that is a guy who the Hawks, you got to be patient with. He's developing, but shows flashes and could be a really, really good player and could be a key player for the Hawks if he's able to reach where they need him to be. He could be a very key player for him. And I think Trae Young would love playing with him. I think he loves playing with Jalen. He's talked about how it's like peanut butter and jelly. I personally think he would love playing with Mouhamed Gueye as well. So that's something definitely that I think overall you should be excited about Mouhamed Gueye. He has a lot of potential ahead of him. It's just a matter of, like I said, once he gets that experience of playing basketball under his belt, I think he'll be good to go. I really do think that. I'm really high on him. I'm really high on him and Kobe this year. So I want to start with those two guys when it comes to just the player offseason reviews, and then just looking ahead at what they can be for this team as projected for next year and during the offseason. So excited to see videos as we get to that part of the offseason when the final playoffs end. Everybody doing open runs and like, oh, Mouhamed Gueye out there balling with him. Oh, I can't wait for the hype, man. I can't wait for it. So really, really excited for those two players, man. And definitely leave your thoughts down below if you have any thoughts on Kobe, Mouhamed Gueye, what you think their projection for the season could be for the Hawks and what you want to see from them. So definitely be involved in the conversation. And now, lastly, we'll talk about these last two playoff series real quick, and then I will let you guys go. First, we're going to talk about OKC and Dallas. This is actually an extremely interesting series to me. Oklahoma City swept the Pelicans I believe they swept the Pelicans last series. I'm pretty sure they swept the Pelicans last series. But realistically, the Thunder, I mean, they are a very impressive team. It is crazy to be the youngest team in the NBA, and for them, or the youngest team to be in this position, the youngest team to be a number one seed, the youngest team to youngest team to sweep a team. Like the history they are making at the youth of age that they are is incredible. I don't know how to say, the coach's last name, but he has done a great job, an absolutely fantastic job. Mark, I'll call him Mark. Mark has done a fantastic job with that team. Shea was an MVP candidate. We know what he can do. Jalen Williams has been great. Lou Dort. People remember Lou Dort had his coming out moment in the series against James Harden, and when he was still in Houston. Like, Dort been around for a second. He's still young and he's still very talented. Two-way guy, 3-and-D guy. Josh Giddey. I mean, we ain't gonna talk about the other stuff, but yeah. I mean, him, Chet was big. People thought Chet, rookie of the year last year, he played. Like, people thought Chet was gonna be a star at this level. And he's been really good for them. Really good. Finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. I mean, you got 2 stars like that. And then you have really good role players. Cakes and Wallace has been great for them off the bench. The other Jalen Williams has been great. I mean, this team is fantastic. Long, again, you got a guy who gets you 30 a game. Chet can be a force. Obviously, the biggest thing for him is he's a smaller guy. So it'll be interesting that Chet matchup with Dallas because they have guys like Daniel Gafford. They have guys like Derek Lively, who they can throw at him, who are bigger than him and may be able to out physical Chet. But at the same time, they have to be ready to defend Chet. And then it'll be interesting to see who they put on SGA. Again, you're probably putting Luka on him realistically, and then you're probably going to have Kyrie on Josh Giddey, more than likely. And then vice versa. How does how does SGA and Josh Giddey defend the Dallas backcourt? We know what Kyrie can do. He's a wizard with the basketball. We know what Luka can do. That series easily, to me, could go 7 games. Like, it'll be big for Dallas because Dallas feels like they're one of the best teams in the Western Conference and they can make a Western Conference. But at the same time, Oklahoma City, they're such a great story. And if they were able to make it to the Western Conference Finals, it's almost like the Oklahoma City team that made it to the finals with Kevin Durant. They were young. All of them were babies when they made the finals. And I think it's crazy how Oklahoma City, through 2 different periods and 2 different eras of basketball now, have developed these super young teams, but they're so talented that they can still win, be top seeds, and get through the playoffs. It's fantastic what they have done up there. You know, and we'll have to see. You know, Sam Presti, man, he was facing some heat. And the thing about him is they still have like 9, 10 first round picks, 9, 10 second round picks, because they remember they had that period where they were just acquiring picks and picks and picks and picks and picks. And so their future, like, if they don't want to pay a guy, they have so many assets that they can use. They really have given themselves so much flexibility to say, if we are not comfortable paying someone who's good, but we don't want to pay him, we're not going to feel like we don't have anything we can do to replace it. They are willing to be patient. They are willing to develop. And they are willing to just say, we're willing to wait for the right situation. And Dallas is coming into this series. High aspirations. Jason Kidd, Luka trying to get it back to Western Conference Finals. That's why you brought Kyrie Day. That's why you traded for PJ Washington, who's been great for them. Tim Hardaway Jr. should, I would think, make it back this series. I would think he would be key. He was their 3rd leading scorer this past year. They're in a great position if they can get him back, and then, you know, really, like I said, this series easily could go 7 games. Whoever wins game 1 tonight, that's going to set the tone for the series, I think, because this could definitely be a back and forth series for sure. And Oklahoma City is going to be rocking. You know, that crowd is one of the best crowds in the game, and so I expect them to be rocking and rolling for their team, and it will be an interesting matchup. And then lastly, Boston and Cleveland. Not really a lot to say here. I mean, Boston should win this in 4 or 5 games. Cleveland barely got past Orlando. I don't know if this will impact Donovan Mitchell staying or going this series result. I mean, if they push him to 7, maybe Mitchell considers staying in Cleveland. If not, they lose in 4 or 5. He may be like, all right, well, we did what we could. Time to move on. I said one of the biggest things that's hurt Cleveland is the fact that Evan Mobley has not become the player that I think a lot of people expected him to be, and being that 3rd guy for them, especially with Jarrett Allen missing the last couple of games of that series with a rib injury. Hopefully he gets back because they need him against Boston. Now, Boston is dealing with injuries of their own. Kristaps Porzingis will not be back probably until the conference finals. So you pretty much know, okay, their interior play is not going to be where they're going to get like 30 points from, unless Al Horford has a vintage day or whatever. You know, your focus is pretty much going to be Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Okoro versus Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. Donovan Mitchell has to continue to get 30 basically a game. Garland has to be better. Obviously, he was able to make some shots late. We all have seen the video of Donovan Mitchell really supporting Garland. But we need Garland. Garland has to ride with Mitchell. Like if Mitchell's going off, you got to go off with him if you're going to have a chance to beat Boston this series. The thing is, Cleveland's a really good defensive team. So I think that the thing with Miami last series, they just didn't have enough offense to really make it a real series against Boston because Jimmy was out. Cleveland could, but are they? That's going to be the key here. If Boston is viewed as the odds-on favorite to get out of the Eastern Conference. Every tough team that you thought that they could face is out pretty much right now. Everybody thinks no matter who they play, they should beat them. So we're going to have to see what happens. And, I have Boston in 5, and I've seen comments, Jaylen Brown, we ain't forget what Cleveland did to us. I'm like, bro, LeBron ain't there no more. Like you can't even do it. You have an issue with LeBron, not Cleveland. But, yeah, so I think Boston will win that series, but it will be interesting to see how that goes. Like I said, Cleveland might shock people. And, that just adds more intrigue to the playoffs. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that is it for today's episode of Bleav in Hawks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like this video or this podcast, depending on if you're listening through audio or video. Leave a comment, leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe. All of those things. And, we'll continue to kick it. Like I said, later this week, Orlando Magic reporter coming on the show to talk about the Magic, talk about potential fit between Magic. I've said that I think what the Magic have and what we have, both team needs. Both teams have something that the other team would want. And so it really could be a really good deal. I just, I know divisional stuff isn't as big in the NBA, but, it's just, it will be an interesting conversation just to see how they feel about this team, because Orlando might have some players that could be available. And so if you're the Hawks, maybe that's not something you should be shying away from. So we'll have to see. But it's your boy Bryce Lewis. This is your Bleav in Hawks episode. See you next time.